Here we are, just who we are, folks. It's good to be back here again. Another day here in October where we're working together in order to find and understand the truth. What do we mean by that? We mean that it's hard to find the truth sometimes, especially when we have to depend on YouTube channels and things like that and independent people in order to find our government has failed. The Democrats, who are supposed to be working for us, have now been working in order to stop democracy. Their party has become more important than the people they were supposed to serve. The same is true of the Republican Party, but I'm surprised that it has happened with the Democratic Party, especially the way they have been persecuting third party individuals. Jill Stein, RFK Jr., and many others, Cornel West, all blocked out of the news media, taking all of every radio station, not allowed to speak on any news programs because they were threatening the power of democracy. The two-party system, not even the power of democracy, but the power of the Democrats. Marianne Williamson, Dean Phillips, attempted to run as Democrats in the primary. They were blocked out, put down, ignored, and eventually forced off of ballots and forced out of the race. And still today, we see the Democrats doubling down on their efforts to destroy people who are running against them, as they are constantly trying to attack Jill Stein. And the sorrowful thing about it is that they are using African American people to do their dirty work. They're using these very high, upper middle class black people who are so totally detached with the black community to stand up, pretend as though they are representing black people, and use the colonial white supremacist talking points that a white person would dare not use. This, my friends, is the tragedy. It's the pain. People fought and died in this country, especially African Americans, in order so that one day the descendants of enslaved people would rise up in power and have a chance to work in the system, to change it and make it better for everyone. And this has happened to some extent, but to more of a damaging extent. We have many people in blackface standing up and speaking to support the empire, flying around in private jets, going to great meetings, raising millions and millions of dollars from corporations and billionaires in order to carry out what those billionaires want. This is what we call successful for black individuals. And that is a major tragedy. The question is, for all of us, how far are we willing to go to be successful in a capitalist society? And is it possible to reach a very high rank in a capitalist society without becoming a perpetrator of the oppression that goes along with that society? You see, the thing that makes a great leader is a mixture of strength and humility. Problem is, I think that in a capitalist society, one of the first things that has to go out is humility. One cannot be rooted, one cannot be down to earth, one cannot realize that there is something greater than they are, whether it be a goddess, a god, a vision, whole humanity. If they do that, it hinders their ability to step on people, to climb to higher heights. So humility is the first thing that has to go out the door. And without humility comes corruption, destruction, anger, and death. And we are in a place right now where humility in this nation is seen as a detriment. As seen as something horrible. I remember once talking to someone about how they were modest. They didn't brag about themselves. They were great. They got offended because to them, being modest meant something bad. It was bad if you were humble. It was bad if you didn't brag about yourself. It was bad if you didn't try to show off and show your greatness, but step back and realize that, yes, you have some greatness, but everyone does also. And that is where we're at today. And so, this great race nowadays, where we have the Democrats and the Republicans, you have the madman who's a Republican raving about eating cats and dogs, and he's raving about destroying NATO and destroying all of the people in Gaza, or helping Israel do that, making bids to billionaires saying that if you give me billions of dollars and you elect me, then I'll cut all of these taxes. It's a madman on one side, with a person who is unable to tell the truth as a vice president, and a woman on the other side who is typical liberal neocon Democrat, out of touch with the black community, but always talking about being in touch with the black community. And when they are in touch with the black community, they are in touch with the bourgeoisie, the upper class of the black community, not the poor ones, not the majority of them. Just this little thin slice at the top, perpetuating and continuing all of the wars, pledging to continue to fund the Gazan Holocaust that's taking place now, to fund the war in Ukraine, where the Ukrainian people are being sacrificed and used as cannon fodder in order to try to injure Russia, continuing an economic war against China, and the threat of sending aircraft carriers, battleships, and things like that in the South China Sea to surround them and to threaten them. Billions of dollars of weapons going to Taiwan while the streets are falling apart. Many people are going bankrupt due to medical bills. There's no housing available for many. The number of homelessness has risen to a ridiculous rate, and many of the homeless people are senior citizens who are forced to live on inadequate social security. Them and people making the minimum wage, which is $7.50 an hour. Imagine living in this country off of $7.50 an hour. It's not doable. It doesn't work. One can work two jobs and still not make enough money to live with decent housing or in a decent place. So we find ourselves in this place where we are going to have to get some type of third party, because As we have seen, voting for the lesser of two evils only does one thing: it gets an evil person in power. And as we have seen since the 80s, when we've been doing that, each president, each congressperson has gotten worse and worse and worse until right now we have a person who is willing to send hundreds of billions of dollars over to various countries in military aid, and who will print dollars out, driving down the worth and values of dollars. We have a person in place now who is dead set on destroying China because of his apparent racism. Cuba, Venezuela, and many of the other countries with skin a little darker than his. In fact, if we look at the United States policy, we notice that there is no healthy policy when it comes to nations that are not white, Anglo Saxon, Protestant origin. And that was an idea, that was something that came out of the eugenics movement a long time ago, when that group and the Germanic group were at the top of the food chain and the others were of very little importance. So here we are, back again. The person Jill Stein for the Green Party is the only one pro-human, anti-war, pro-medical for all, pro-relieving of debts and the creation or the recreation of the type of school system there used to be in California, where their state school system, all of the universities and colleges were free. But people are afraid to vote for that party because we have been brainwashed into thinking they can't win, and they have been silenced. So no one can hear or know the truth. I think it's time for us to begin to realize that even if we don't vote third party this year, which we should, the only way to save this nation is by getting a strong third party and getting the two parties that are working for violence, for war, working to create a world that is better for the top 10% and not caring about all of us, the ones who are more interested in collecting donations from billionaires and super PACs. We need to be able to get them out of there, or the country is going to be gone because of the foreign policy that has been chosen. The path that we have chosen has made enemies out of most of the world, as we slap sanctions on 30, 40, 50 countries, as we have worked to overthrow the governments, the elected governments of more than 80 countries in the world, as we have started economic wars with many countries, we become the face of the monster. We become the evildoers. And I don't even know if we become that. We've just pulled off the mask. And once everyone sees it, we can't put the mask back on. It is a terrible thing when people realize that our country has been destructive to the peace of many nations in the world and many regions. So we need to either decide to be demonic and keep going until we fall apart, as we are now, or change. There was an old saying in the old biblical days about the prophet Jonah when he was supposed to go to Nineveh and he was supposed to warn the people that God was going to wipe them out if they didn't change their ways. He hated Nineveh. He hated those people. He refused to go, so he jumped on a ship going in the other direction. And then when there was a storm, he said, hey, throw me overboard, because he'd rather be thrown overboard and drown than go talk to those people. But to his surprise, he was swallowed by a big fish or a whale, and he was taken right to the shore of Nineveh. He ended up talking to the people, and all that he said to them was this: either change or die. And then he left. My message to the United States right now is the same as the prophet Jonah: either change or die. Thanks for being with us on this channel. We have many spiritual teachings at our website at www.nextstepcoaching.mysite.com. We have interest books you can buy and exercises you can do in order to help strengthen the mind, body, and soul. Please take a look. Thanks for being with us today. Namaste.